My name is Teresa Denny, and I am the Fund Development and Donor Relations Coordinator at Shepherd Village. I've been here for over 19 years. And within those 19 years, I've experienced a lot. I'm not talking just here at Shepherd Village, but in my life, in my personal life. And I've been asked to kind of welcome you. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And to explain why this type of seminar is important. So I'm not going to really do that. I'm not going to tell you why it's important. I'm going to show you. I'm going to kind of show you how it affected my life. Okay? So, like I said, I've been here for 19 years. I started in February. In December of just before I started, I made a date with my mother to go Christmas shopping. So I showed up in the morning, all gung-ho for this mother-daughter date. And when I walked in there, she's running crazy, trying to get ready for an appointment. I said, "What are you doing? We're supposed to go out. Come on, let's go out." No, I have to get ready. I forgot that I made an appointment with Dad and your uncle and your aunt and Nana to go buy our graves. A what? What? I didn't hear correctly. So she, yeah, we're going to buy our plots. And then my father comes up to me and goes, "Don't worry, Teresa. If you die before I do, you can have it." Like, what? I said, "Okay." And she goes, "Go sit down for a minute. Let me get ready and we can go out." So I go and I sit down. I'm trying really hard to, process what I've just been told. And I'm sitting there and I'm working through it and I'm thinking, okay, I guess it's smart, but really, come on. And as I'm sitting there, here comes my grandmother walking down the stairs without her teeth on. So I've never seen her without her teeth. And she, it was just like a sledgehammer, reminded me, look how old she is. They're talking about buying plots. She's looking really old. I can't take this anymore. So I jump up and I run out of the house. "I can't do this, Mom. I gotta go. Something came up. I gotta go." Okay, so within the first year of my working here, my grandmother did pass away. So that was the very, very first time that me personally, I was affected by a loss that close. But I wasn't really, it didn't really affect me because I wasn't involved in it. I just showed up. So, it really didn't mean a whole lot other than the grieving loss of my grandmother. So, but when my father passed away in 2021, I have to thank Chapel Ridge because they helped us step by step by step, because my family and I were just at a loss. We didn't know what to do, and we were just so affected that we couldn't think, we couldn't process. So they literally took us by our hand. So that was the first time that I was truly impacted by a death and a funeral. And it was also at that point, my memory goes back to December of 2005 with those burial plots. Thank God they did that, because that was one less thing that I had to take care of, or that we had to take care of. Now, not long, a few years before my father passed away, my parents decided to update their wills and their power of attorneys. Now, it had been a long time, and it was a smart thing to do. Even though I would prefer the original will, because it stated that I got 50% of everything, and my two sisters got the other 50%. Of course, there was a provision that, yeah, I only got it if they died before I was an adult. But anyway, they did it. They updated their wills and their power of attorneys, and it was a smart move. Then my in-laws, it was like a stone rolling down the hill. Then my in-laws deteriorated really fast, all at the same time. My father with dementia, my mother-in-law physically, and we had to put him in long-term care. They don't speak all really good English, and especially with my father-in-law, he lost his skill to speak English. Even though he's been here for 50, 60 some odd years, he lost it because of the dementia. And my sister-in-law and my husband, they depended on those POAs because they had to step in and take care of them. So yeah, POAs are really important. And then not long after, to step back a bit, just before we had to put them in, a few years before we had to put them in long-term care, my father-in-law retired. My father-in-law worked independently. He was an immigrant from Italian. He picked up a job selling pop door to door with a company called Cynar. Anybody hear about Cynar? I guess you'd have to be Italian. So he delivered pop door to door with a truck independently, which means that when he retired, he had no pension. So they relied on any savings that they could put away, and whatever the government can give them. And my mother-in-law, when she immigrated, she was a seamstress. She worked with piecework, and she worked from home. Eventually, not long after that, the kids came, she stopped. So she was at home, stay-at-home mom, so there was no savings on her side. So what happened is when my father-in-law retired, no pension, only the savings that they could gain through his work, we contacted our financial advisor. And we said, how can you help them make the most of the fixed income that they have? She stepped in, she looked at everything, and she helped them go into their 90s. My father-in-law passed away, but my mother-in-law is still alive, and she's still reaping the benefits of that. And the advisor is still helping us with her finances. Now, that's this type of stuff that's the reasons why we think that these type of seminars, the information that is provided in these type of seminars, and the advice that we have from the experts are really needed. Now, I have to admit that last October when we had the seminar, I'm not going to face him right now, my husband and I, he was in attendance, and we kind of made a pact to, we need to start planning our funeral arrangements. And we kind of procrastinated. So Jordan, we need to talk. Now, right now, would like to do is introduce Rich Janes. He is our lead pastor, interim lead pastor, but he is the director of spiritual life and strategic partnerships. Rich?
Thank you, Teresa. And really, the event tonight will function in two different ways. There's going to be an incredible amount of information that will come to you, and it might even feel like a fire hose. And it's like, how do I process? How do I take it all in? So that's the packages. And all that you see going on the two screens here, you can find in the packages as well. And that will help you to recall it afterwards. And it is incredibly important, as Teresa has just mentioned, that we plan, right? If we fail to plan, we plan to fail, and is the saying. And so we are planning tonight. And as a result, we're going to begin by talking about planning a celebration of life service. So in your packets, you'll see the handout that it's there. This is the one that looks like this. And Jordan from Chapel Ridge, he and I are going to share this segment together, and we're going to walk through the funeral preparations. And so when Teresa was saying, I haven't seen him, he's not ignoring. This is Jordan from Chapel Ridge, and our partnership with Chapel Ridge is just so important and special and meaningful. And I'm thankful for all the staff there. And Jordan's such a good friend of Shepherd Village, and he'll come up in a few moments. But we begin the night by thinking about that moment that perhaps some of us, we prefer not to think about it. And yet it is incredibly important that we have agency and that we have our voices coming forward in those final moments of celebrating our lives. And there's kind of a lot of things that can go sideways when there's a lack of clarity and a lack of planning, and families can be wondering and confused and torn apart. And it's really great to have things settled financially and logistically that will really help moving forward. And so as we get in, I want to draw us to some wisdom. This wisdom comes from the Bible. And for me as a pastor, that's where I draw all of my direction in life and the wisdom that I want to live by. So I want to take you to a book in the first half of the Bible. The first half is called the Old Testament. The second half is called the New Testament. You didn't think you were going to get a Bible class lesson tonight. But for those of you unfamiliar, maybe perhaps with the scriptures, there's this ancient text that is written by what was at the time known as the wisest man in the world. And he wrote this book called Ecclesiastes. And the book is divided into, I think it's 13 different chapters. And in chapter 12, he begins by talking about honoring and enjoying your Creator. And I'm just going to read it here. While you're still young. How many people feel they're still young? All right. All of us, right? We're still young. There's plenty of life ahead, friends. Now, I'm not prophetic here. I'm not predicting this, but I believe there's still life. You're still young. So honor and enjoy your Creator while they're still young. Before the years take their toll and your vigor wanes. Years can take the toll, and that vim and vigor that we once had, it begins to fade a little bit, just slightly, right? Before your vision dims. When we did a session 6 months ago, I did not wear these. 6 months, I'm wearing these, and the vision does dim, and the world blurs, and the winter years keep you close to the fire. This really talks about sort of settling down and, caring for your affairs and making sure that everything is together. In old age, your body no longer serves you so well. I think we would say, yep, I feel that ache a little bit more, that pain a little bit more. This is an issue that I'm facing. These are situations I'm walking through. Some of you, I know you've battled some things, you've persevered, you're still going strong, but life can be difficult. Our body can not serve us as we had hoped. And here's an explanation. Muscles slacken, grip weakens, joints stiffen. I walked 12 kilometers yesterday on a golf course with Mario and Alan. I woke up, my joints were stiff. I feel it. The shades are pulled down on the world. You can't come and go at will. Things grind to a halt. And suddenly you're thinking, why in the world is Rich starting so depressing? Like, I thought this was going to be a little bit more enjoyable. I'll get to why I'm starting with this in a moment. The hum of the household fades away. You are wakened now by birdsong. Hikes to the mountains are a thing of the past. Literally, this is my favorite thing to do. I wouldn't even imagine if I could not hike, especially mountains and hills and everything like that. That's just so important to me. But there comes a point in time where the life we lived is a thing of the past. And in fact, even a stroll down the road or the halls at Shepherd Village has its terrors. Your hair turns apple blossom white. Friends, I just got to be honest with you. If I even have a lick of hair where it can turn white, I would be happy. Because it isn't looking like it's happened like that way. And I'm jealous. John, I'm jealous. But our hair turns apple blossom white, adorning a fragile and impotent matchstick body. Yes, you're well on your way to eternal rest. And in the middle of all of this, while your friends make plans for your funeral, Life, lovely while it lasts, is soon over. Life as we know it, precious and beautiful, ends. The body is put back in the same ground it came from. The spirit returns to God who first breathed it. So why do we start here? So Solomon, he's known as being incredibly wise. There's wisdom and intelligence from experience, and I believe from what God invested in and imparted in him. And he is incredibly honest. That's a really honest look at life, isn't it? And he's incredibly transparent. And he talks about things that maybe, in public we wouldn't talk about, with a lot of comfort. But his honesty and transparency leads him to reality. And that is a fact, and he reflects on it. You've got your friends planning your funeral, and they're planning that because one day we will pass away, and we will return to the earth. And so in his wisdom, he is explaining to us, plan. It's incredibly important that we think about these moments. And so that's, I think, why you're here tonight. You have decided, I want to be a planner. I want to be ahead of things. I want to have agency, and I want my voice to come through this so that when that moment happens, and I pray for all of you here that is a day in the future, far in the future, but when that day happens, there is something not just financially, and we'll get to that in a few moments, not just something financially planned, but from a perspective of your funeral and how you would like to see that unfolded. So a celebration of life is a service, is your opportunity to tell your story. And I look around the room, and so many of you I know, and I think of the adventures and the lives you've lived and the people that you've impacted and the relationships you've built and all of the loved ones that love you. And the story that your life has told is now going to be summarized. I actually said to our spiritual life team about 2 weeks ago, we have meetings every Thursday morning, and I said, you know what? Here at Shepherd Village, we should be in the business of funerals before people pass away. Wouldn't that be a neat idea? So that you could hear all of the words that people would say about you that you maybe didn't get a chance to hear because they're not courageous enough to tell you how much of an impact you had on them. We leave it for when they're not here. I think we were all like, yeah, we should do this. We might start to facilitate that. And if you would like a living funeral, we might start offering those so that, again, it's not about pride, it's about being encouraged and understanding the legacy that you have and impact that you've had. So it's an opportunity for your story to live. So if I was to ask you a question, if you had to write your life story in one sentence, what would it be? Have you sat and actually thought about, how can I summarize the life that I've had? And would it even be possible to put into one sentence? You would really be trimming down everything to ultimately a value, a perspective, a belief, a conviction that you ultimately lived with. You'd probably put it into that. Well, a funeral is that. Now, anytime you involve pastors, it involves way more than one sentence. And, you're going to get a whole bunch of sentences. But ultimately, a funeral is a summary of your life and your life story, distilled into an hour or so. And I would suggest that it would be wise of us to plan our funerals. And so we're going to go through the various steps that are required for this process to take place. And the first step is here at Shepherd Village that we offer the opportunity for you to meet with one of the pastors. Doesn't have to be me, one of our team, and you can begin to plan what you wish. And so I'm going to take you to another form in the packet, and it looks like this. And this is a funeral service preparation document. In a few moments, Jordan's going to give you some incredibly helpful aspects regarding connecting with the funeral home and what a funeral home does and how they walk you through that. But this is a tool that we have designed for you to choose the steps and the decisions that you would prefer. And we just walk with you through this. We'll ask you some questions. We'll get a little bit of clarity. There's some places for notes. you would sign it, a family member of yours would sign it, one of us would sign it. And this, of course, is whether or not you're going to have Shepherd Village play a role. It doesn't matter. It's really something that would go within your important legal documents. It's signed, and so when the day comes, your family isn't wondering, you know, how are we going to figure out the service? Is the service at a church? Is it Shepherd Village? Is it under a tree? Is it by the ocean? Is there no service? Are we singing songs? What's going on in that? And your wishes can come forward in that moment. And so you can take this, and if you have any questions, feel free to book a meeting with myself. Number 2, and Jordan, I'm going to call you to come on up here and share with us, because we are grateful for our partnership with Chapel Ridge. And of course, you're going to need to have a relationship with a funeral home of some sort. And I don't know how long the relationship has been here at Shepherd Village with Chapel Ridge, but I am so grateful for it. And I'm going to give it to you to take over. And I'm going to give you this. Slides forward.
I think it's about 25 years, more than 25, 26 years that Shepherd Village and Chapel Ridge have been in partnership. And you've been here 19 years, Teresa. Wow. So you've seen a lot of Chapel Ridge in 19 years. So as Pastor Rich said, there's several different steps to what we're talking about tonight. Has anyone here planned a funeral before? Okay. Boy, not as many hands as I thought, 4 or 5 hands. Who here has written down what they want to have happen when they pass away? Nobody? Okay, one, okay, perfect. So when someone passes away, there is, as Pastor Rich mentioned, there is a whole pile of things that have to happen. So we're gonna go through some of those big things from a kind of a 30,000-foot level. Let's see, funeral prearrangement. Okay, so when someone passes away, we're told that there are up to 77 things that have to be done within 48 hours. Don't worry, we're not going through all 77 things tonight, but they're broken down into 4 categories, as you can see on the screen. So the first one is vital statistics. This is information that the government requires to register your death. Okay, so it's where you were born, social insurance number, maybe where you worked, your parents' names, your mother's maiden name, where they were born, of course, spouse information, who your next of kin is, who's your executor, these types of things. And so we gather all that information ahead of time so that it takes the guesswork out, okay? And so that your family or whoever's left behind doesn't have to scramble to find this information. Now, the next category is funeral arrangements. Now, some people today say, well, I'm not having a funeral. I'm going to have a celebration of life, as Pastor Rich just mentioned, or a memorial service, or whatever. Whatever label you want put on it, whatever your arrangements that you want are, what are they? And so from a basic cremation to a full traditional funeral and everything in between, what is it that you want? Okay, so there's no right or wrong answers there. Everyone's wishes are different, and that's great. So we could talk through, on the funeral arrangement side, everything you can think of, right down to the cards and the book and the notice in the paper, all those things. Because about 90% of all these things can be done ahead of time, which is why it's called pre-arrangement. Now, the next category is cemetery arrangements. So if your wish is for cremation, for example, actually, I'll give you a little piece of trivia. Does anyone know what the cremation rate in Toronto was in 1980? What percentage? Any guesses? 30%? Any other guesses? Sorry? 5? Yes, it was 5%. 5% in 1980. And in 2024, we crossed 82%. So in 45 years-ish, we've gone from 5% to 82%. And so with cremation opens up a whole lot of options, a whole lot of creativity for what you want to have done. And the reason I say all that is because with cremation, you don't need a cemetery if you don't want to. So your family can take your cremated remains and do with as they wish, Scatter them in the ocean, blast them into space, whatever they want. Whatever you want, I should say. But they can, of course, be buried in the ground, or they can be placed in the wall, those types of things. However, if your wish is for casket burial, it's a little bit more complicated. Because we can't just throw the casket in the back of the pickup truck or the minivan, right? No, of course not. So where would you like to be buried? Is there a family plot somewhere? If not, what are the cemetery options that you might want? Sometimes people feel more strongly about a cemetery that has maybe other family members in it. And so we get all those arrangements sorted out ahead of time. And then the fourth category is what I call, it's like a miscellaneous category. All the things might have missed. It's other arrangements and decisions. So things like, flowers and food and slideshows and all this kind of stuff. So like I said, the good news is about 90% can be done ahead of time. And so the idea is once this is done, you pass away and your family gives us a call. And whether you pass away here at Shepherd Village or in the hospital or somewhere else, we make all the arrangements to bring you into our care. And then we pass you off to Pastor Rich, or whoever the pastor is that is going to be looking after your service. So we work together very closely in the planning of the service. We take care of the technical pieces, of course, with the death certificates and all the government paperwork and that kind of thing. But it's your service or whatever you're gathering, your family gathering, that's what takes over next. Since our seminar in October, I was actually at a conference at Tyndale and talking about grief and loss. And there was one quote from the speaker that I really wanted to share with you tonight. And I thought it was really interesting. When we don't have a service, we don't allow people to grieve properly. Because when we have to grieve, we have to activate the grieving process to mourn. And so the speaker was talking about how he's counseling people, 10, 20, 30 years after the fact, where the family had no service or no gathering, no nothing, and then they're regretting it 10, 20, 30 years later. And so I always say to people, do something. It doesn't have to involve the church. It doesn't have to involve the funeral home. But it's important for your family to do something for closure and to activate that grieving process. So what are some benefits of funeral prearrangement? Just very briefly, is it makes your wishes known to your family, whatever that is, okay? Like I said, from very basic to very traditional and everything in between. It avoids emotional overspending. People often spend about 20 or 30% less when there's a plan in place because the family knows exactly what you want. Takes the guesswork out again. I was told a story about 10 years ago about two brothers who had come into the funeral home, not Chapel Ridge, and dad had just passed away, and they wanted to do that last honorable thing for their father. So they told the funeral director at the time, give dad the best casket. What could go wrong with that, right? Well, $10,000 later, dad was in the best casket. But that's what we would call emotional overspending. But the biggest problem with this emotional overspending that I want to highlight is it's not when things are happening, when when the service is happening, when decisions are being made. It's 2, 3, 4 weeks after the fact when the guilt comes into your family. Why did we do that? Why did we make that decision? Why did we pick that? And because they're not always thinking clearly. So because they're often exhausted. They're emotional, not thinking clearly again. And so again, it reduces the burden on your family and it gets your affairs in order. So prearrangement works. If you want to meet with me at a later time, we go through all these things, like I said, put a plan in place, and then you decide how you want to prepay for it. So your funds are protected by the Ontario government. And when we meet together privately, we'll talk more about what that means exactly. This is a great one. But Jordan, I'm too young to get a prepaid funeral. Well, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing one of these presentations, and I was speaking with a lady after the fact on the phone about funeral pre-planning and that kind of thing. And she said, well, I'm too young to be thinking about this. I said, okay, no problem. Through the course of the conversation, she said she had a birthday coming up. Now, I'm not sure what prompted me to ask how old she was turning. Not a wise question to ask, right? But anyway, through the course of the conversation, I asked her how old she was turning, and she was turning 92. But at 92, she thought she was too young to be thinking about a prepaid funeral. So we can all agree that that's a good perspective, perhaps, but we can also all agree that you have more years behind you than in front of you, right? What happens if you pass away out of the country? Well, I'm not sure if anyone's going on any world cruises here at Shepherd Village, but if you were to pass away from home, away from Shepherd Village, away from your residence, we take care of the arrangements to bring you back to Chapel Ridge. So does anyone have any questions?
The media the last 2 days has been talking about the Maritimes passing laws about organ donation. And they're having it go by default, that if you don't object, then your organs will be donated. Do you have any encounters with this?
Well, organ donation takes place while you're still in the hospital. So that's a conversation between the hospital or the medical facility and your family. Whatever your choices on organ donation, it doesn't affect anything we have to do at the funeral home. You know, if you want to have a viewing, that doesn't affect it at all. And so that's a personal choice. But it doesn't surprise me that the Maritimes is moving that way. I think we'll have that here in Ontario soon enough, where it's almost automatic unless there's an objection. Any other questions?
Have you had any problems transporting someone back who has died overseas?
Excellent question.
Like some countries are a little problematic when it comes to getting a body on a plane and all of those things.
Right. Yes. Yes. So we work with a company here in Toronto called McKinnon and Bowes, and they're known as the shipping experts. And so the coverage the option that we offer through the funeral home is through this company called McKinnon and Bowes, but you call Chapel Ridge, you don't have to deal with them directly. And whether you're in Mexico or overseas or on a cruise or anywhere in the world, it's one call to us and we handle all the details. The flights, the paperwork, everything. The cost, there's nothing out of pocket for your family. It doesn't cost your family an extra nickel. So this company that we deal with, McKinnon and Bowes, they are the same company that the government was using when our soldiers were passing away in Afghanistan, Afghanistan and Iraq. So those ramp ceremonies you saw in the news, same company. So they know exactly how to get someone from A to B to C. So if that happens to you or anyone you know, we are still able to help there. Good question. Right, so most travel insurances have a repatriation coverage. Yeah, most are, $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000. The problem with the travel insurance repatriation is twofold. One is it's often outdated amounts. So if you pass away, say in Greece or somewhere like that, I've seen bills firsthand where it's $20,000 to bring you from Greece back to Toronto. And so $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 sounds like a lot of money, but it's a drop in the bucket. The second main problem, though, with those repatriation coverages is they're reimbursement only. So your executor still has to do all the work, make all the phone calls, deal with the airlines, deal with the local funeral home customs, language barriers, all that kind of stuff. In other words, do everything and hope to get that money back. So it's not really a great plan. So the coverage through the funeral home is much more comprehensive, no money out of pocket, and one phone call. No problem. Good question. Well, you guys are good today. Any other questions? Okay, well, we won't extend the evening too much longer. If you want to talk to me afterwards, as Pastor Rich said, I'll be here to speak to you afterwards. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jordan. So we're working our way through, planning for our service, and you have perhaps made arrangements with a funeral home. Also, I'll draw your attention. We've got the number 2. Number 3 is making a decision of where that might take place, whether that is here at Shepherd Village or at church. You have a home church, or perhaps you're this will be taking place in a different city, so you want to make sure that you record that. And then we're thinking about the service itself. Of course, if you're choosing a service, and there's a number of things that you would think about in terms of hymns or passages of scripture, poetry, whatever might reflect your spiritual journey. And then the rest of the planning involves figuring out who might officiate that service, whether there'll be individuals responsible for providing eulogies and all of the fond memories that are shared there, the scripture reading and the songs. You want to involve your family in this so that ultimately they know your wishes and intentions, and it's communicated in advance so that they can ultimately honor you the best. And then a service that we provide here through our spiritual life department is to connect with Stephanie, who will assist the family in the preparation of a bulletin, should there be a service that comes here and guests arrive. So we just wanted to give you that tool and let you know that we are available. There's no charge for the planning of this funeral or meeting or any of that kind of stuff. This is something we provide just to give you a bit of peace of mind as you think about that day where Solomon talks about, and the wisdom of Solomon, that one day as we pass and we return to the earth, that we would have our affairs in order and be prepared for that. So next on our agenda here is a conversation about our finances. There are two areas that we speak about. There's our health and there's our wealth. When we think about moving through the journey of life, we want to build each of those. And yet there'll be a moment when our health fails, and we need to make sure that our wealth is secure and in good order. And so we are honored to have a partnership with two gentlemen, David and Nicholas from IG Wealth Management. And again, I'll draw your attention to the package in your booklets. And they're going to come now and walk us through that. And at the same time, because I think we're switching this up, we have Marlene Doss, a partner of Aon Law Partners, who is here tonight as a lawyer to provide you with some really tried and tested wisdom and information. We found last year there was so many questions that were from a legal nature that it was really good to have someone with that background. So I'm going to ask my three friends to come on up, and we got two mics. I'll let you share the mics and figure that out, and we'll work our way through the rest of the evening. Let's give our three guests a hand here. Marlene, David, and Nicholas.
Okay, thanks so much for having us. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Shepherd Village. Listening to the speakers, thank you, before us shows us the weight of this decision, and I love seeing people take notes because it also shows that you take this seriously as well. So the way that we're going to be presenting this, we'll try not to get too technical. There's a lot of evergreen information, and there's a lot of specific things that are relevant to, current markets, things like that. So we'll try to keep things relatively general and simple, but if you have any questions for us afterwards, feel free to snatch us at the end. So we'll get started. I'm David. And Nicholas. Nicholas here is the lead advisor. I'm the associate advisor at our group at IG Wealth Management, and this is Marlene. I think we may have gotten the firm wrong, but Marlene, do you want to?
That's okay.
Yep.
Yes, I'm Marlene Doss, and it's nice to meet all of you. There's a little brochure in there with some information about what we're going to be talking about. Sorry, that's better. I'm just going to bring it down. I'm not very tall, as you can see. Can you hear me okay? Okay, and yes, Doss Law is the firm that I'm with, and we're going to be talking about estate planning, but I'll let these gentlemen get it started.
Thank you. All right, so the agenda for today, we're just going to go very briefly over four main topics. So number one, estate planning 101. So it's just going to be basics. What is estate planning and how do we do that? 201 is going to be looking at taxes. So looking at what does the net estate look like? How can we try to minimize the tax burden on the estate, leave as much as possible for your beneficiaries, for charities, and again, talking about your legacy, right? So what do we leave behind, and You know, it's ironic because Rich was talking about the celebration of life and how that is a proclamation of, you know, what are your values and what do you believe. Another way of looking at your estate planning is the same thing. What are we leaving behind and to whom? Who are we valuing? Who are we supporting with our estate? And most importantly, what are we saying about ourselves and our lives? And estate planning is a big part of that. And then we talk about the roadmap and then how to work with us as professionals for the estate planning. Okay. So the basics, estate planning 101. What is estate planning? Estate planning is a process of making a plan, right, in advance of your death and identifying who will receive the assets when you pass on. So big things here are your individual goals and concerns. So again, number one, looking at what is your net wealth right now. So what is your net worth and pre and post tax? And then we're looking at who are we passing it down to? Is it, again, beneficiaries, people who are in our lives, loved ones, and or charities, the church or Shepherd Village, for example. And of course, looking to communicating that to our families. We want to maintain family harmony. So we want to make sure that it's clear what we want what we want to do with our wealth and how it's going to be communicated to our beneficiaries. Importantly, again, is not just a simple will kit online. There's a lot of templates and things like that, but the complexities are not taken care of there. And again, with the gravity of what we're doing here, we want to make sure that we're doing it right and we're doing it, the best way for yourself and your family. And then we want to review it regularly. So, we've mentioned major changes in your life, but also just on a regular basis. Things sneak up and change, in the background all the time, and we don't consider our will, so it's important to schedule a review.
Yeah, so 3 basic areas where we want to look at goals and concerns. First of all, or one of them anyway, is that we want to minimize taxes and costs. Somebody said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but not a penny more. We want to minimize delays on estate. Probably something you can speak to, Marlene, that how do we delay those things? Things can take a whole lot of time. My mother passed away during COVID, and it took like forever to get the probate passed. So how do you minimize delays on estate? And clarity for your beneficiaries. You want everything to be in order so that everybody knows what's going on. And oftentimes that can be done beforehand, not just with the will, but having a family meeting, letting people know this is what mom and dad are going to do, or this is what somebody's going to do, and get comfortable with that, because that's what it's going to be, rather than having a big kerfuffle afterwards.
All right, so I've got some questions for our lawyer here, Marlene. We want to get an idea of some of the basic concepts, but we want to make it a little bit engaging. So I want to get some hands up first before we ask the questions. Anybody here, do you guys have a will set up? Hands up if you have your will in place. Okay, very good. Not too many without the hands up. This is definitely the most basic and fundamental. So if you can explain, Marlene, what is the will? What's the purpose of it?
Okay, but first of all, let's ask another question. How many of you have your powers of attorneys in place?
Okay.
Oh, this is good. Okay, even
Great.
better. And are these documents up to date? When was the last time you took a look at them and updated them? Raise your hand if you have them in place and they're up to date. Oh, much fewer hands. Okay, that's okay. We can work with that. Okay, so as David and Nicholas were saying, do you guys understand what is estate planning? Why, what's the difference between a will and a power of attorney? Does everybody understand this? Yes? Okay, so people get confused about this, so I'm just going to say it just in case. The will talks about what happens in your distributions and who's going to be in charge after somebody passes away. The powers of attorneys are while people are alive. Okay, you can't use a power of attorney once somebody passes away. Okay, to set these things up, you have to be capable. You have to be of sound mind. So a lot of people say, okay, I don't need it right now. I'm fine. I don't need anybody to step in to deal with my finances. I do all of that by myself. I make my decisions on my own, right? Did I get ahead? Okay. um, but the problem comes when you've decided, you've thought about it and you said, I don't need it now, so I'm not going to do it now. And then when you do need it, you haven't done it, or when somebody needs it to help you out, you haven't done it. And then I get the call that says, my, whatever it is, sister, mother, father, aunt, uncle are in the hospital. I need to pay their bills, are in, have broken their leg. I need to pick some stuff up for them. I need to pay their cell phone bill or their phone line or whatever it is, their utilities. I need to speak to the property management if they live somewhere. And they say, okay, so I need to set up a power of attorney for them. And I say, are they capable? Can they speak to me? Can they tell me what they own and how they own it? And can they discuss with me their wishes and explain that they want to appoint you? Because if they can't, I'm not allowed to do it. It's illegal for me to appoint somebody as a power of attorney without the person in front of me being able to clearly tell me their wishes and understand what it actually means. Okay? So that's a big thing, all right? So when you're preparing your will, you're talking about how you want everything divided, who you want it to go to, but a lot of estate planning is also tax planning. And I think you guys are going to get into this, yes?
Yeah.
So we'll leave it, do you want me to leave it there?
Yeah.
Okay,
So we'll come back
go
to
ahead.
it. Okay. So we'll come back to taxes in just a moment. We want to talk about children, so passing things down to your children. So there's always going to be a question of how do you treat your children or your estate, and does fair mean equal? So Nicholas, I'll pass it on to you about that.
Yeah, we usually think in terms of, if we have 3 kids, then we'll divide things 3 ways, right? If we have 7 kids, we'll divide it 7 ways. Someone has said we love our children equally, but we treat them uniquely. There could be the case where one is a missionary and has very little support or something that may need more funding or support, whereas, another family is very well off, both husband and wife have good jobs, things like that. So God didn't always treat things equally in the scriptures. We can see that. And so there's kind of a precedence there for looking at the situation and saying, should it be equal or not? Another thing, and talking about charity, I don't know if we get into that now, but when you look at, there's a charitable strategy called adding an extra child called charity. So for example, if you had 3 kids and you wanted to divide things up between 3, but you decided to divide things up amongst 4 of one child called charity, actually the 3 kids don't suffer much from the spreading things out among 4 because of the tax consequences. So something to look at, that you can give money away and still save on taxes and not affect the rest of your beneficiaries to much of a degree.
All right. How many of you here knew that you can give to your church as part of your will or your estate? Hands up. Okay, very obvious, yeah. So a big part of it is leaving something behind. So if you have a certain account, it's going to be taxed quite a bit potentially. Let's say it's a RIF or an RSP. Including your church as a beneficiary could be a good tax saving. Then we'll get into taxes a little later. But how many of you here knew that Shepherd Village as well is a charity, as well has charitable status? You can give to Shepherd Village. You can also give out of your accounts. You can also give out of an insurance policy, or there's a lot of different ways to be creative. It could be directly with your funds as investments, things like that. There's a lot of tax strategies, and we don't need to get into it all. But ultimately, that child called charity is a strategy not just to save on taxes, but to then, recognize who's important to you and support them. All right. So we're going to jump into the taxes section. So Marlene, just a question about types of tax. So how are we getting taxed? How is our state getting taxed?
Okay, so a lot of people don't realize that death is actually a huge tax trigger. When somebody passes away, there's a lot of taxes that tend to need to be paid. So there's two main types. One is what people call the death tax or the probate fees or the estate administration tax, right? That's paid to the courts when somebody passes away in the process of getting your executor or your trustee appointed, okay? And a lot of people worry about that. It's 1.5% of the net value of your estate in Ontario, right? And people think it's a big amount, and it can be, especially with the value of real estate now if you still own property, et cetera. But the bigger one that people really don't realize is your income tax bill. So everybody files their taxes every year, right? Okay. And as David was mentioning, accounts such as your RIF, right? Let's say you've saved up, you've been spending it, you're drawing from it every year as you should, but there's still $250,000 when you pass away. Let's just buy an example, okay? You pass away, guess what happens with that $250,000? It's great, you did the right thing, you named the beneficiary on it, it's gonna go to your children. But the $250,000 is considered sold, deemed disposed when you pass away, and it's added to your final income tax return as income. The full thing, the whole $250,000. So what does that do for a lot of people? It bumps them up to the highest tax bracket. So now instead of $250,000 or the net value of your estate being X amount, it's reduced by $125,000. But also, where's that money gonna come from? Do you have a life insurance policy in place? Do you have other cash that's available in an account? Or are your children, executors, trustees going to be trying to figure all of that out while they're grieving and dealing with all the other stresses that you have to deal with when somebody passes away? So a lot of what we talk about is making sure that those things, we talk about the value of things, we talk about what those tax bills are gonna look like and where those funds are gonna come from, right? And they step in to make sure that the plan is in place so that these don't become stressful events or stressful things for your family members.
Absolutely, and a big part of what we do on a day-to-day basis is estimating final taxes. So obviously using some assumptions, we can then forecast, okay, if we're only drawing a certain percentage of these accounts every year, we're gonna be left with X amount, and that's all gonna be taxed. So how about we withdraw this amount a little bit sooner, maybe a little bit quicker, spread out the tax burden over a number of years? What if we use a different type of account? Let's say we move that money into a TFSA, tax-free savings account, things like that, that will then be thinking ahead, right? So it kind of goes with the theme of planning ahead regarding taxes. So what about probate? What does that process look like? And how can we minimize or almost eliminate that whole issue?
Okay, so I get asked this a lot. And honestly, the goal is not always to avoid probate. The bigger goal is often to minimize the other tax, okay? A lot of people say, I wanna add my kids onto my accounts, I wanna add them onto my home, I wanna add them on so that they don't have to worry about this stuff later on, okay? And then what they don't realize is you're losing control of these assets that you're changing over, right? Because now there's somebody else that has a say in what you're going to do with it and when you're gonna do it, okay? So what happens if that child that you've added on, you know, has a mental health issue, has an addiction problem, gets divorced, gets separated, you know, what happens then? Or creditors come after them because they've made some bad financial decisions. Well, now you're jointly on title, on the accounts, on whatever. You're equally responsible for their liabilities, okay? Or something else happens and now you want to, you know, if anybody here owns a cottage, they've added their children on so that they can just have the cottage when they're no longer here. Well, okay, fine, great idea. But then they run into health issues and there isn't enough funds available to pay those bills. So they would like to sell the cottage. And this actually happened to somebody. They want to sell the cottage so they can, you know, they can pay to get into a senior's home or whatever it is. And they went to their 4 children that they added on title and said, hey, you know, I think we're going to have to let go of this cottage. And they said, oh, sorry, Dad. No, we all love the cottage. The children love the cottage. You're going to have to figure out another way. Well, Grandpa over here did not think that that's how that was going to go when he added them all onto title to avoid probate and to avoid the court process. Okay, getting back to the real question that you asked me. Probate is actually the process of having the courts confirm that the last will, 2 things. If there is a will, to confirm that the last will is the last valid will, okay, that's available and written. The second purpose of probate is for the court to confirm who the executor and trustee is. Okay, the trustee is the more important piece. They're the ones that are responsible for dealing with the estate, with filing the tax returns, with the distribution of the homes, with the selling of the property, and then making sure all the beneficiaries get whatever you've written in your will. So the probate process is the process that the court actually confirms the appointment of that individual. Okay, and the taxes in that is where you look at, so when we're doing the application, at the time of the application, we look at the full value of the estate of the person at the time when they passed away. So whether it's been a while or not, let's say the application's being filed 6 months later, a year later, things happen sometimes. We're looking at when the person passed away, what was the value of these things? And then it's 1.5%, and we write a check, or the trustee writes a check, or the estate writes a check, depending on what's available, to the court for that amount while we're filing the application. Okay, so it's not when everything gets settled and they have access to the funds. It's early on. That's the key part of that.
So planning is key, right? So getting ahead of these things. How can we estimate? How can we have some of these things accounted for? So that's a really big part of it. And being, you know, stewards of what we've been entrusted with is a big part of it, because, you know, who owns it all, right? If we feel that we own it, it's our responsibility to just do with it however we wish, then we think about it completely differently than if we feel that it's been gifted to us and we've been entrusted with responsibility for something that really doesn't ultimately sit on our own shoulders, right? You know, we're not going to be going into the next life with our wealth. It's about what are we leaving behind and what are we saying to the world. So we want to be as responsible as possible. We want to look at, you know, what is the purpose of each account? You know, what is, you know, what are we doing to maximize, you know, the fruit of our labors, basically. And it does seem a little bit complicated, but if we go about it one step at a time and are a little bit methodical about it, we're here to hold the hand and take it a little bit slowly. But again, the earlier we plan for it, the better the results tend to be. Okay, so we're going to talk about legacy planning versus estate planning.
So you might be wondering, what's the difference between legacy planning and estate planning? Estate planning is kind of what we've been talking about up to now, the nuts and bolts of things and how to have things in place legally, probate and all of that. But legacy planning takes on a whole other dimension. And we talk about growing heirs versus growing wealth. Growing heirs versus growing wealth. You know, you can grow your wealth. What about the person or the people who are going to receive that money? We have a huge sense of stewardship to be preparing them. There's a book that we want to give out at the end. If you sign up for our there's a little package we have there, and we're going to draw this book in a week to come or something. But it's called Splitting Heirs or Splitting Hairs by Ron Blue. Ron Blue's a prolific author on faith and finances. And somebody wrote up just a précis of this book, a 3-page, so you don't have to read the whole thing. Again, you can get that if you sign up for the package, and it's excellently, very well done. One of the things it says here is that kind of like Pastor Rich was saying earlier about, you know, telling your story and how that can be important to preparing the heirs that are to come. And he says, one of the most useful exercises you can do is to write out a mission statement for your life. A key to financial freedom and to effective wealth transfer is to understand my life purpose. Each person has a specific purpose in life that is unique based on their gifts, talents, relationships, and opportunities. So we have this opportunity, maybe the last opportunity in our, used in our will or something like that, to pass on our values, to train the next generation. Values versus wealth transition. We don't want to pass on just wealth. Wealth is the kind of the easy thing to pass on, right? But values are much more difficult, need to be inculcated into our children or our heirs over the years. And how long can that process last? Talk here about a lens of 5 to 7 generations. There's an interesting passage in Psalm 78, verses 5 to 7. It says, "He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children. So the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children." So you see the generations happening there of passing on traditions and God's law and values. "Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands." So that whole area of thinking through, what is my mission? How did I come across this wealth that I have to give away? Some sort of a testimony of what God has done through your life can be left in our will or in this whole process.
Okay, what does the roadmap look like? So we are talking a lot about theory and things like that. So just quickly, step by step, what are next steps? What does it look like? So identify your beneficiaries. This is really important. So again, are we looking at just our children? What are the percentages? Again, fair doesn't necessarily mean equal. Are we going to be doing any charitable giving? Anything else? How else do we want to plan for these things? Speak to your financial planner. We'll want to look at taxes. Okay, so what is the net estate size, and what are we going to do in terms of strategies? So we'll be looping in, of course, the lawyer when it comes to executing. Insure the gap. Sometimes we'll be looking at using life insurance or something like that to make a difference there. Let's say, like Marlene was saying, if there's a tax bill, maybe a life insurance policy can cover that amount just to maintain the value of the estate. And then, of course, update your legal documents. So it's not specifically has to be done in this order, but it's very important to be in touch with all the professionals at the right times. Okay, what is our approach? So in a nutshell, there's a few problems that come up. So problem A, live too long. Okay, it doesn't sound like a problem, but what if we outlive our money, right? We need plans in terms of that. Die too soon, of course, and we haven't settled everything. And then, or if we get hurt or sick in between. So that's kind of our strategy as financial planners. We want to take account for all these things and plan for each of these things. So we use software, we use our understanding of the client. We want to make sure we get a full idea of your personalities, your values, your goals, the people who are important to you, and make sure that we have that full relationship. And then we look to be kind of the go-to people, the lawyers and the financial advisors, just to ask us questions, right? What's going on with the markets these days? Or what should I do with this account? Or, if I want to leave something behind for my children and I'm not going to be spending it during my lifetime, how should I treat those funds differently? Again, that whole concept of stewardship, it's important to have that mentality. So we've got some software and we don't need to get into it today. But again, just kind of having all the financial professionals round table your concerns. So that's something that we want to prioritize as well. Okay, and then lastly, a consultation. So with any of us, if you'd like to reach out, this includes you, Marlene, as well, right? We just want to make ourselves available. So if you do have any questions for us, feel free to leave your information with us outside, or feel free to come up to us afterwards. Obviously, there's no obligations, but it's something that we wanted to do out of our partnership with Shepherd Village.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so now I have a question for you guys, since I know we're on the spot. But for those of you that didn't raise your hand about having an estate plan in place or haven't kept it up to date, I want to know from you what's holding you back. I hear a lot of different reasons from people when they come to me finally, but I'm just curious if you are willing to share what's keeping you from doing those pieces for yourselves or for your family. Okay, procrastination, yes?
This is a very quick tax question. I'm talking about the reefs. Reefs.
Rifts, yes?
Yeah, you know how you have to withdraw it over time when you're over 70. And I'm really very old already. So my problem is, what is a more beneficial way for me to handle my reef? Okay, I have two beneficiaries, which is, it would be silly, it would automatically go to my beneficiaries.
Right.
Is it advantageous for me to withdraw it all now? What is the tax implication if I withdrew my balance reef now for me, or leave it there to my beneficiaries? We will pay a huge amount of tax.
You know, that's an amazing question.
Yeah.
I'll jump
Yeah.
in. It's the
please.
next,
Question.
yes. The unfortunate thing is the answer requires so many bits of information that we don't have just yet. So we'll jump in, but I'll give you an example, okay? So what matters is your age, the amounts, your current tax bracket, if you have a TFSA, do you have contribution room, and a few other factors I don't need to get into, but the main thing is you want to be looking at, if you want to withdraw it, what is your current tax bracket and how many years do you want to spread it over?
So here's a question. Oh, sorry, I was going to say, if you move it from a RIF to a TFSA, is that tax-free?
No.
Right,
You
so
get
it still
taxed
triggers
as
tax.
income, but it'll be a percentage of the portfolio, not rather than all in 1 year. You can
Yes.
do it over 5, or
Right.
however many.
And then the tax-free account will be transferred, so that one goes outside of the estate, and it goes outside of the income taxes, right? So it covers it all. Tax-free savings accounts are good that way.
Amazing.
You talked about generations just a while ago. I was thinking, even, can I name my grandchildren to inherit this? I have two beneficiaries for everything, but their children has no tax bracket yet. Can you tell me if I can do that now? Because I need to make a decision.
Yes.
Not tonight, but
Not tonight.
I actually skipped through a slide that mentions grandchildren, and I thought it was a little too niche. But briefly, something to note about grandchildren is you may have a set number of grandchildren now, but what if another one is born, right? What if, things, okay, that might not be that relevant. There's
For sure, no.
a few other things to note as well. It tends to be cleaner and more, I guess, simple for the estate if it goes through the parents. But if there's a specific reason that the grandchildren will need funds, for example, it's up to you. You could do whatever you'd like with your will.
the probate, the estate tax, when I die, I will have to pay for the tax in my hand. It's terrible.
Yes. When somebody passes away, if I passed away today, whoever's dealing with my estate has to file my income taxes, if I haven't already, for 2024, and then for 2025 from January until May 5th.
Yeah.
Okay? And whatever's considered income in that is going to have to be dealt with before they can get what's called the clearance certificate from the CRA, which protects the trustees and makes sure that everything is free and clear. I think one thing that we didn't touch on, actually, that I'd like to just briefly is, and it might be part of, so you said procrastination. I think that's part of the reason that people put it off, or they don't know where to start, or they don't know who to name as the people responsible, or they just don't really understand the process or what happens if you don't have the wills in place, okay? So just a couple of things quickly. If you don't have your estate plan in place, do you guys know that the government is going to decide who's going to get what and how? Does everybody understand this? There is legislation, right. It's called the Succession Law Reform Act, okay? So what it does is it gives everything to, first it's the spouse, if there is a spouse that's living, the spouse gets everything, okay? Then, after the spouse, if there isn't a spouse, then it gets divided to the children equally. Whatever living biological children exist will get it equally. It doesn't matter if they're estranged, it doesn't matter if they live in a different country, it doesn't matter if they're incapable, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. If they're disabled, which can disqualify for them for things, okay, it'll get split equally. And after that, then it goes to other family members, all right? Same thing with the right of somebody to be appointed as a trustee. If you don't want your spouse to be appointed, or you don't want all three of your children to have the right to be appointed, or I'm just giving an example. Let's say you have 3 children, you don't want all 3 of them to be appointed as your executor and trustee and have to manage that, or they won't agree, or they're not going to know how to handle it, okay? Then that's something that you need to plan for. Otherwise, the government is going to say, no, all 3 of them agree. I can tell you guys stories for days about the estates that I'm dealing with that have problems in them because people just didn't bother to plan. And some of them are not worth a lot. There's one I will share with you. The person that passed away, I think the value in his bank account was about $243,000, okay? He didn't have a will. He passed away, leaving behind 5 siblings. Okay, parents have pre-passed, not married, so it's no children. 5 siblings, split the estate now. Less than 250,000 we're talking about. What's the problems? Well, since he passed away, 2 more passed away. So now what happens? Well, each of them had kids. One had 2 kids, one had 4 kids. They're the beneficiaries of those shares. Now we're dealing with them in this whole process, all right? Add to that, one of those siblings lives in the US and refuses to be a part of this process. Guess how long we've been working on this? It's been a long time, and this should have been a simple process. Why? Because he didn't bother to just sit down and write a will. It's like an insurance policy. It truly is. It's setting your family up and your loved ones up for a way to have just a clean, clear, and simple process as much as possible, okay? So if you're putting it off because you don't know where to start, I am happy to answer any questions that you have and help you to get started. But I will say, naming somebody as a trustee is not an act of love, okay? You don't do it because you care about this person so much, and if I don't name all 3 of my children or all 4 of my children, somebody's gonna get upset and they're gonna feel like I didn't care about them and that I'm picking and choosing. No, you just speak with them. If you know that 3 of them live in different provinces, some are in the States, some of them don't wanna be involved or won't be able to handle the stress, if they're grieving you, don't name them. It's not going to help anybody. You just talk to them beforehand, you explain to them why you're setting things up, the way you're setting them up, and you know what, 9 out of 10 times, maybe even 10 out of 10 times, the children are not upset. It's what you think is gonna happen is different from the conversations. Okay, I'll stop now. Thank you, just needed to add that.
Just getting back to your question, I think that the idea of giving while you're living, is a good idea. Thinking about not leaving everything to the end, but giving to your children or beneficiaries while you're living. It's just it needs to be looked at carefully, wisely, in terms of tax consequences, etc.
Yes.
Technically, thank you. Technically, there's no estate tax, inheritance tax. It's more like the income tax on whatever is remaining of the estate.
Yes, in Canada, we're not taxed on inheritance. In the US, you are. In other countries, you are.
Yes.
And depending on the value of what you're inheriting, at some point, it does trigger a tax, and the beneficiaries do get taxed. In Canada, we don't have that.
And then another thing, there are certain periods within which you have to comply, like probation of will, and when is that supposed to take place, and when are you supposed to handle these periods?
So if there's a will and there's a trustee named in it, okay, they are responsible to protect the assets and protect the interests of the beneficiaries. So if they delay in doing something and that impacts an investment, for instance, or, they let the real estate go to the wayside, they're not maintaining it or whatever, they are liable. They can be sued by the beneficiaries for doing that, okay? Now, also, if you don't deal with real estate after 3 years, then it's called vesting, becomes owned by the beneficiaries. There's still a process there, but there's kind of an automatic right to it. Okay, that's the 3-year mark. But really, you want to get an understanding and get the process started as soon as you can. Not right away. Like, I've had people call me and say, my mom just passed away yesterday. I think I need to see you. And I say, no, you don't. Go deal with what you need to. Go do your grieving. Is there something urgent that we need to deal with? Is a mortgage up for renewal tomorrow? Is there something pressing that we have to deal with today? If the answer is no, then I say come back to me in a few weeks or whenever you're ready, or we'll set up another time to speak about this, okay? But that's the other part that makes the estate planning, like the estate planning process, we also look at everything, right? So when I'm preparing the wills and the powers of attorneys for my clients, I leave them with a nice little folder where they can put all the important documents for the loved ones in it, right? So if you have a financial portfolio, we're going to put it in there. If you have an insurance policy, we're going to put it in there. If you have bank accounts, we're going to put copies of the statements in there so that they're not scrambling to figure out what you had because you were so private, right? It'll at least be there so that they know, and they're not running around to every bank in the city trying to figure out what you have or getting the lawyers to try to figure it out for you. So we create a place where everything is kept nice and safe and obvious for them as well.
Is there such a mechanism here called power of attorney coupled with interest, such that even when the person dies, the power of attorney, the attorney in fact continues to operate based on that?
Nope, that's illegal. They
Oh.
cannot use your power of attorney once you've passed away. It's only while you're alive. After that, the will dictates what happens and how. And if there's no will, then the law will decide for you.
I see. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
no
thank you.
problem.
My parents couldn't agree about making a will. My dad said our 6th adopted child is not getting any of my money. And my mother says, well, I'm not making a will unless he's included. So they kept putting it off.
So what happened? The last person?
A good ending to the story.
Okay.
I think the lawyer just eliminated naming anybody and said all the children.
Which means that the 6th child was included.
Trustee and executor.
Yes, good question. They're kind of interchangeable. The executor, okay, so the trustee is the one that actually manages the estate and distributes everything after. The executor is the person that's going to go into the house and clear it all out and, get it cleaned up, maybe work with the realtor just to or give the distributions of the contents of the home. They're gonna deal with the personal stuff, right? The trustee is the one that deals with all the other pieces of it, where they deal with the financial advisor, they'll deal with the funeral home. If there is something in place, they'll deal with the lawyers, with the accountants, everybody that needs to come into play. That's the basic.
Oftentimes that's the same person.
Yes, it's usually the same person. That's right. When we're writing a will, it's usually the same person. You can also have a trustee named in your will for a particular thing. So I can say that this is going to be, my husband is going to be the executor and trustee of my will. But if he's not here, then my sister will be my executor and trustee, but my cousin is actually going to handle the things that are left behind for my children who are minors, and I'm going to put that into a separate trust. So in that way, you can have different trustees, but yes, usually they are the same individuals that are named, and then you name alternatives to them, or you can stipulate, even with the powers of attorneys, you name alternatives to them, you say when they start to act, when they, what will stop it, things like that.
Just to mention, as part of the package out there, if you sign up for it, there's a booklet where you can list all of your assets and all of your insurance policies and all those things in one place so that an executor or a trustee can have a copy of that.
If the person receives something, is it taxable to the person who receives it?
No, it's usually taxable to you, like our question before. If she gives from her RIF, she's going to be taxed on it, so you need to be careful. But it's, yeah, it's always taxed on the person that is giving. No.
Thanks so much for having us. I guess we'll give it back to Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, well, that comes now to the end of our evening. Thank you so much for being here. As I said to you, there'll be lots of general principles that I think you've heard and understood, and some great questions. Thank you, because that really added to the night, pulled some information for everybody. But you likely have some personal questions, and they have said their services are available to you as part of our partnership and our gift to you. So there's an opportunity for follow-up and sign-up outside there. I trust you would take advantage of that. And it's often maybe a little bit difficult to ask the personal question in a group of this size. You want to keep it private. So those moments will be for you to follow up with, and I think that will be the opportunity for you to really make this night meaningful. So if this has been helpful, please let Teresa and I or Favor know, and any feedback that you might have that you said, hey, I really wish you had covered this, or, explained this. That'll help us in future sessions. We hold these every 6 months, so there will be another one in the fall, and you're welcome to attend that as well, and we'll have promotion coming out at that point in time. But we appreciate you coming tonight. Have a safe walk home.